Wow, a video with a title containing the words Armenians and Türkiye. Surely the comments will be very peaceful. Anyways, I'm pretty certain that almost no one has heard of the ethnic group we're about to cover. The Posha people, also known as the Lom people, are one of the most interesting and little known minorities in Türkiye. There is a lot of mixed and contrasting information about them. It is impossible to talk about the Poshas without triggering someone, since the three main schools of thought behind their origin are also tied to rival nationalistic views. So what we'll do is start with the more commonly accepted view and then cover the others along the way. The first view claims that the Posha people are Gypsy Armenians or Romani Armenians. According to this perspective, they were part of a wave of Romani people who left the Indian subcontinent around the 10th or 11th century AD and spread across many regions. One branch of this wave settled in eastern Anatolia, and over time it became the group we now know as the Poshas. Back then, those lands were predominantly inhabited by Armenians, and over the centuries the Posha lived alongside them, intermarried, and were absorbed into Armenian life. Many converted to Christianity and joined the Armenian Apostolic Church. Because of this close contact, their Romani-based language blended heavily with Armenian, creating a unique mixed tongue called Lomavran, essentially a Romani grammar based filled with Armenian vocabulary with some Turkish and Persian influence. The second view suggests a different trajectory. It argues that while the Poshas did live in proximity to Armenians, they largely maintained their own cultural identity. According to this version, they kept themselves apart as a distinct community through the Byzantine, Seljuk, and Ottoman periods. Only a smaller portion of the Poshas adopted Christianity, while the majority continued as Muslims. In this framing, the Poshas may have borrowed words and expressions from Armenian, but their main identity remained independent rather than absorbed. And finally, the third view combines elements of both. It suggests that within the Posha population, one branch mixed more closely with Armenians and gradually assimilated into Armenian society, while the rest preserved a separate identity but were still influenced linguistically by Armenians due to centuries of contact. In this way, the group's history is seen as a mixture of both integration and independence, depending on which community you look at. In short, all these views agree that a group of Romani people settled in eastern Anatolia and to some extent interacted with the Armenians. However, the level of Armenian influence on the Posha differs depending on which view you listen to. Like many Romani-related groups, the Poshas traditionally worked in crafts and trades. They became especially known for sieve making, so much that the locals called them the sieve people. Men made the sieves while women went door to door selling them. Music and dance were also important parts of their culture. Weddings could last for days with drums and zurna pipes, dancing, and colorful costumes. Older generations recall playful dances where men dressed up in comic roles or brides wearing dozens of intricate braids. While much of this has faded, it shows that Posha traditions were lively and unique. For centuries, a considerable number of Poshas were part of the Armenian Church, but after the upheavals of the last years of the Ottoman Empire and the First World War, many Christian Poshas left Anatolia for Armenia and Georgia. Those who remained in Türkiye were mostly followers of Islam. Today, the Poshas in Türkiye are almost entirely Muslims, blending into the religious landscape of their surroundings. But what do the Posha say about themselves? Field interviews today reveal a spectrum of self-identification. Some Poshas call themselves a mix of Romani and Armenian, some insist on a distinct Posha identity, some identify as Meskhetian Turks and see themselves as fully Turkish. Now let's talk about their language, Lomavran. Linguists call it a mixed language. Its grammar comes from Indian origin Romani, while most of its vocabulary comes from Armenian. Imagine Armenian words arranged in Romani-style sentences. But sadly, Lomavran is almost extinct. In Türkiye, only some elders still use it, often as a private or secret code. Younger generations rely almost entirely on Turkish, with maybe a few old words or phrases remembered. In fact, some Poshas themselves admit, "Our children don't speak Lomavran, the language is disappearing." In Armenia and Georgia, there are around 8,000 and 2,000 Poshas respectively. In these countries, Lomavran is nearly gone. People there speak Armenian or Georgian now. So overall, Lomavran is in its final stage of survival. Now let's see how Lomavran that is spoken in central Türkiye sounds. This footage we're about to watch contains Lomavran that is heavily influenced by Turkish, so it almost sounds like a mix of Armenian and Turkish.
Es Hacı Feyzi'yi nakçıyım. Tamam mı? Ondan sonra eser buna eser şatmı konuşmuş. Cemile mi? Ana konuşmuş kileme poşetçe. He, hiç hanım.
Ay kuyruk makine.
Asya gibi kuris yak. Kuris emini. Abi çesap. Abi çesap hadi.
Kabris.
62 darlıyım. 62 darlıyım.
Ay darıyız.
Hastaya 13 darıya hasta.
Nasıl yerek darıyız?
İstanbul'da Zeytinburnu'da yetişmiş hamur. Andak keselim.
Tum kan dörde.
Yes, vatsınlar egane.
Tum kan dörde.
In addition to this footage, I managed to find some field notes of recorded Lomavran in central Türkiye in 2014. Let's go over some sentences now and see once more how truly unique this blend is. As mentioned previously, please note that this Lomavran speech is heavily influenced by Turkish and does not represent general speech, but a local one. The first sentence is Gadunun poru anutuye, which literally translates to the cat's stomach is hungry. Here we see a very interesting mix of Turkish and Armenian. To break down the sentence, gadu meaning cat is a loanword of Armenian origin. The possessive suffix nun, however, follows Turkish grammar. Por meaning stomach is another Armenian-derived loanword in Lomavran. Once again, a Turkish possessive suffix is used here, which is the ı ending. Finally, anutuye meaning hungry or without food might be derived from the old Sanskrit word for food, anna. Another example is öküz diye çıka, which means there are no oxen. In this sentence, we see the Turkish word öküz for ox. Diye acts as a plural marker in Lomavran. Çıka is borrowed from Armenian and means there is none or not. Zavı battaniyenin içine sok, hastalanır translates to put the child under the blanket, he or she will get sick. The first word zavak comes from Armenian and means child, while the rest of the sentence is entirely in Turkish. And the final example is ağıper, meaning give the salt or pass the salt. A means salt in Armenian, and per is a local pronunciation of the Turkish word ver, which means give. The Poshas are scattered across Türkiye in small pockets. The biggest concentrations are in the northeastern Black Sea, in eastern Anatolia, in provinces like Artvin, Rize, Erzurum and Kars. There are also communities in central Anatolian cities like Çankırı, Tokat and Sivas, as well as in the Black Sea interior like Sinop, which alone has several thousand Poshas. A few families live in larger cities such as Istanbul and Bursa. Exact numbers are impossible to know since Türkiye has not collected ethnic data since the 1960s and many Poshas hold different perspectives regarding their identity. Rough estimates suggest around 10,000 Poshas in Türkiye today, but it could be more or less. Presumably, from a few dozen to around 1,000 people speak Lomavran in Türkiye. Socioeconomically, they are among the poorer groups in their regions. In the town of Ardeşan in Rize, for example, the vast majority of Posha families live in rented homes, with only a small minority owning property. Despite these challenges, younger generations are breaking barriers. Today, there are Poshas working as teachers, municipal workers, and police officers. It is also important to place the Poshas in the bigger picture. Türkiye has three main Gypsy origin groups: Rom, Dom, and Lom, or Posha. All trace back to India, but they split into different migrations. The Rom came via Europe and live mostly in western Türkiye. The Dom settled in the Middle East and today are found in the southeast of Türkiye. The Posha stayed around the Caucasus and eastern Anatolia. Each of these groups has its own dialects and traditions. My unsolicited perspective on this would be to define the Posha people as a group of Romani origin influenced by the Armenians in the past, who have been largely Turkified today. My research on the Posha mainly showed me sources approaching this topic with either Armenian or Turkish biases. I think both sides are a bit too much filled with a nationalistic narrative. Armenian sources tend to not focus on their Romani origin that much and categorize the Poshas as Armenian due to the fact that a considerable number of them had spoken Armenian or Lomavran and converted to the Armenian Apostolic Church in the past centuries. This does not fully make sense to me, as language and religion does not directly confirm one's ethnic background. The Turkish perspective tends to disregard the Armenian influence on the Poshas and either categorizes the Poshas as a fully Romani group or Meskhetian Turks. This does not make sense to me either, as there are a lot of visible Romani and Armenian influences on the Poshas' daily speech. Things are not black and white, and in this case, the answer is in the gray area. There have been some small efforts to preserve Posha culture. In 2009, activists founded Lomdar, an association in the city of Artvin to protect their heritage, fight early marriages, support youth, and raise awareness. It ran for a few years but closed in 2015. Still, it was a step toward visibility. Yes, much about the Poshas is vague and ambiguous, but regardless, they are another beautiful color in Türkiye's diverse mosaic. Sadly, their language and many of their traditions are vanishing. But the fact that we can even tell their story today shows their resilience. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.